Well, it looks like Magician of Black Chaos won't be following us to Master Duel. Another WinCon gone. It seems like Mommy has a new WinCon every week. I just miss...
Is that my little Alpha Thubin?
Dad!
Sorry I was at the corner store for so long.
Did you get them?
Monster Negate? They were 2 for 1.
Yay! Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts! I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. This video is going up Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. If the ban list has released by now, you're probably thinking to yourself, why the hell are we talking about DRYTRON when Topologic Gumblar Dragon's legal again? And if it hasn't released, I'm so happy to be able to share this space in hell with you. Anyway, presenting DRYTRON.
Sorry, my lips are a little dry.
So here's the list. DRYTRON has a top in the modern era, and we've built a list based on that, but not exactly identically. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. I've been shilling Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck for, well, years at this point, and I'm happy to announce I have no intention of stopping anytime soon. By now, they've become the most complete repository of tournament tops on the internet, the best place to jam prog with friends, and of course, still host strategy articles. Recently, they've added a new piece of infrastructure to the fold, a 3-card arena draft, draftable with card pools featuring classic formats, Master Duel, or within any parameters you like. Give it, or any of their other features, a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. So with that, let's dig into DRYTRON. DRYTRON is a real enigma of a deck. While it's of course extremely powerful in its own right, its legacy has largely been to shine a light directly upon some of Yu-Gi-Oh's most egregious design mistakes. Early on, it used a boss monster feared in ritual circles since print, Herald of Ultimateness. Later, it integrated Union Carrier into setups to give that monster an immunity to Forbidden Droplet. The bodies on field were perfect for generic bosses like Apollosa, and later Verte Anaconda. It used Orange Light, Ava, Beatrice. Of course, the core advantage engine used by the deck is the non-once-per-turn Ben 10. Even today, the main game plan is to put enough bodies on board to tribute summon Vanity's Ruler, plus make a Magician of Black Chaos on your opponent's turn through Dynamondo. It's led to this weird push-pull. The deck is either using cards immediately suspect for the ban list, or it's awful. Until now. DRYTRON New 2 is a powerful new piece of legacy support that gives the deck what it's needed for years. An identity out of being whack-ass Centurion. New is everything you could ever ask for. It gives the deck for the first time a 1-card combo, it searches, it extends. There's just one downside. It locks you into machine rituals for the entire turn. No Perfection, no Black Chaos, no Amor Factor Pain dual terminal, and as it turns out, that's completely fine. The new DRYTRON ritual, Dad, along with an old favorite in Nids, are way more sufficient to win the game. The deck's now responsible for end boards that look a lot less explosive, Rabbit, Mask for Dynamondo, Dad, maybe some spell negates in Fafnir or Dragster, but are much more capable at beating the modern metagame. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, this guy, DRYTRON New 2. Like all DRYTRONs, he can't be normal summoned or set and has to be special summoned by a card effect. And if a DRYTRON is on your field, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. No tribute required. If it's special summoned, you can add a DRYTRON monster from your deck to your hand, except for New 2, and you can ritual summon the turn you activate either of this card's effects, except machine monsters. Now, notably, that special summon condition doesn't have to happen via its own effect, so if it's summoned off of Nova, you still get to trigger. We've got one copy of Ultimate Bright Knight Ursatron Alpha, the card you will usually be searching off of New 2, and I would bet you forgot existed. This card is both an Ursartic and a DRYTRON, and like all DRYTRONs, has to be summoned by a card effect. If you control an Ursartic or a DRYTRON, you can special summon this card from your hand, then add an Ursartic or DRYTRON spell trap from your deck to your grip. This fills a lot of niches. Of course, it can get DRYTRON Nova or DRYTRON Fafnir, but it can also get Meteonis DRYTRON, which helps in hands where your opponent has correctly identified a choke point of Zeta. Speaking of, we've got 3 Zeta, 3 Gamma, 3 Thubin, Alpha, and 2 Delta. Of course, we are all the way in on these monsters because seeing a critical mass of them is so, well, critical. The deck doesn't actually use its normal summon, so over the course of Ben 10 searches, we are going to eventually find a Diviner of the Herald, which on normal or special summon can send a fair carry monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. We are playing, of course, Herald of the Arc Light in order to send off of this, which will increase the level of this card to 6, meaning that it can pair very easily with a 1-star DRYTRON into a copy of F.A. Dawn Dragster as part of an end board that needs to resist spell traps. Why does it need to resist spell traps? Well, because Dad solves pretty much everything else. This card can be ritual summoned with Meteonis DRYTRON. Other DRYTRONs you control can't be destroyed by card effects, and twice per turn when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish a DRYTRON minimum 1 from your graveyard, whose total attack equals or exceeds the original attack of the monster activating the effect, negate the activation, and destroy it. If this ritual summoned card is destroyed by an opponent's card, special a ritual monster with 4,000 attack from your hand or deck, and it's treated as being ritual summoned correctly. Now, notably, that twice per turn effect is specific to the copy of Dad. So, if theoretically you were to use both negates, then find a way to cycle this NIDS back onto the field, you could negate 2 more times. And what piece of link material would allow you to do that? Don't worry, the best card in this deck by a lot is probably Dynamondo. If you picked up copies to make Magician of Black Chaos, I have great news, you're gonna still get some use out of it. We're also playing 1 copy of Draconids. This card does a lot for the deck. Obviously, it's the float target for the Dad, but it's also just a really strong card in its own right. It has 4,000 attack, which is easier to make off of Meteonis DRYTRON in a pickle, and it pops cards. Sometimes negation isn't good into an established board. After that, we've got 3 copies of Cyber Emergency, 3 copies of DRYTRON Nova, 1 Meteonis, and 1 Fafnir. And leading up the rear, we just have a bunch of consistency tools in non-engine. We've got Pot of Prosperity, Foolish Burial, Silo Hat Trick for the Rabbit, 3 Forbidden Droplet, 2 Triple Tactics Talents, 1 Called by the Grave, and 3 Infinite Impermanents. In the extra, we've got F.A. Dawn Dragster and Herald of the Arclight. We've got a little Zeus package with Sky Thunder, Downward Magician, and double Mu Beta Fafnir. A quick reminder, if you're unfamiliar with this deck, it's one of the most effective Zeus strategies in the modern metagame. And Mu Beta Fafnir is actually on a lot of the time. You may know this as the mechanism by which you get a bunch of DRYTRONs in a rotation, but did you know that if your opponent activates a spell trap card while you control a machine ritual monster, you can detach a material from this card, negate the activation, and if you do destroy that card, I'd sure forgotten about it until I remembered, thanks to the glowing arrow. We've got 1 copy of Lyrilisk Assembled Nightingale. This is, of course, the most effective Zeus pilot. It's also, like, really important in some scenarios where you get hand-trapped a ton of times and don't want to die on the crackback. It's kind of your, like, shifter game plan. But it's also a wind-winged beast, which means if you go thrust in boarded games, you could just go get Harpy's Featherstorm, make this guy and pass, and just, like, skill drain them for a turn. It's really funny. Access Code Talker, Dynamondo, Nightmare Phoenix, SP Little Knight, Silhouette Rabbit, IP Masquerade, and Herald of Mirage Lights, which is a spell trap negate, and Relinquished Anima are all at home in this strategy. This deck does fart out link material like nobody's business. It's just becoming abundantly clear that doing that isn't sufficient to win the game on its own anymore. It does make the crackback a lot easier. In the board, we've got a lot of stuff. Of course, the aforementioned Harpy's Featherstorm. We've got another Thrust Target and Dimensional Barrier. We've got Evenly Matched and Dark Ruler No More, the Thrusts, a Feather Duster, a Change of Heart, 3 Nibiru, and unfortunately 1 copy of Vanity's Ruler. It is still an incredibly effective tool against a lot, but not all of the metagame. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Branded, and we have opened just a smattering of guys, really all you can hope for, to be honest. We're going to begin with a copy of Cyber Emergency, and thank God for no Droll. We will go Alpha for Zeta, the old combo, to get ourselves a copy of Ben 10 and trigger the effect of the Zeta, triggering the effect of the Ben 10 in the process to get us a Meteonis and another copy of Ben 10. Next up, we're going for Mu Beta Fafnir. We'll activate the effect in order to send Big Daddy, and then we'll activate Meteonis DRYTRON to send the whole thing to the graveyard for our boy. Now that we have Negation online, we will activate the effect of the Meteonis DRYTRON in order to decrease the attack. We'll go New for Delta, and then summon back the New, triggering the effect of the New in order to grab our big Ursatronic man. We will go for the effect of Ursatron Alpha and then Fafnir. Fafnir is going to go ahead and grab us a Nova. We'll activate the Nova in order to get our last remaining DRYTRON into rotation, here the Gamma, before going Silhouette Rabbit, setting a copy of Silhouette Trick, then activating the Gamma, pitching the last remaining Ben 10 in order to summon back the Zeta, trigger the Ben 10, and grab ourselves a copy of Diviner of the Herald. Finally, we'll go Masquerena, Diviner, and guess what? We hadn't normaled. We'll go Herald in order to grab another Ben 10 and make a Dawn Dragster. We'll set that for Bin Droplet and pass back to our opponent. Our opponent's going to begin with a copy of Aluber, the Jester of Despia. That's probably worth a negation. They're going to go for Called by the Grave here, which we will let resolve. Afterwards, they're going to go for Branded Fusion. That's worth a Dawn Dragster. It will be negated. And finally, our opponent's going to go for an Albion, sending another Branded Fusion to the graveyard and finding an Allure of Darkness. Okay, we still got game to play. They'll go Mercurier. That's also worth a negate in my estimation. They will go Opening in response. We'll go IP Masquerade to make Dynamondo. And then at point of resolution, they'll go ahead and get that Tragedy, at which point we can activate the effect of the Dynamondo in order to bring back our copy of Nids. They'll go Cartesia. We will Nids once again. And they are left on one pathetic card. Our second match is up against Labyrinth, and you're about to see a really unfortunate side effect of playing this deck. Our hand looks good, but our opponent has the blue Butler and Dimensional Barrier. So we're going to go for Alpha Tribute Zeta, at which point our opponent goes for Arias, sending Dimensional Barrier, and then we will go ahead and grab a Ben 10. We'll go Zeta pitch Ben 10, at which point our opponent will flip it up and call it Ritual, but here's a fun fact about Dimensional Barrier. It doesn't negate the graveyard effects of Ritual monsters, so we do get to cash in the Ben 10s, we just can't make the big boy this turn. With that understanding, let's just go for a generic board. We'll go New 2 for the Ursatron. We'll trigger the effect of the Ursatron, get itself out, and grab ourselves a copy of Fafnir. We'll Fafnir for a Nova, and then from this position, it's all Gucci. We'll go for the effect of Delta. Let's see if we can draw something crazy. No, unfortunately. We'll go for the effect of Ben 10 to grab a copy of Diviner of the Herald, use the effect, sending a Herald of the Arclight so we can get the last remaining Ben 10 out of the deck before making a Dawn Dragster and a Silhouette Rabbit. I screw up the arrows here just a little bit, but pretend I didn't do that. We'll go Gamma in order to summon itself and one random piece of material before going IP Masquerena and passing turn. Our opponent is going to lead with a copy of Infip in main phase. No! We'll chain the effect of Masquerena. They will go for Arias here, and we will go ahead and make an SP Little Knight. At point of resolution, we'll SP Little Knight, targeting that copy of Dimensional Barrier. I am not getting transaction rollback today, and as we negate their Ariana, they will concede. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's playing what else but Fiendsmith Snake Eye. This is kind of a weird one. We're going second, and our opponent's hand is just stopped by Ash Blossom, functionally. Oh, God, my kingdom for an Infip. Maybe it's better that we don't have non-engine, because those Triple Tactics talents are just staring me right in the face. They're going for the Poplar combo here. It's pretty low impact, but it does do everything you want. They're going to go for OSS into, of course, this copy of Oak, into the Fiendsmith line. They'll go the Fiendsmith, use the effect of the Requiem to target the Fiendsmith, then Oak to send the Requiem in order to get a copy of Ash, because it hasn't been weaved into the combo yet. Of course, that Poplar was normal summon, so they can special the Poplar from the hand, at which point they can link off for a sequence. They'll activate the effect of the sequence, putting 2 of these bad boys back for a copy of Lacrimosa. Then they'll activate Lacrima effect in order to grab back the Fiendsmith to hand, activate its effect for a Tractus, then fire off the Tractus as well. That's going to grab them, unsurprisingly, a Luri, which will go to the graveyard and immediately trigger, summoning itself, and then they can make a copy of the one, the only Promethean Princess. Finally, they are going to sequence target the Lacrimosa, so they have a target for Ash, and then they're going to make a Nightmare Phoenix out of the Flamberge Dragon, co-linked down. You'll see why in a second. Ash and Oak back, they'll trigger the effect of the Princess in order to bring back the Flamberge. Down comes the effect of their Graveyard Fiendsmith, and they'll make a Masquerena into an Apollosa. So that Apollosa is downlinked to the Nightmare Phoenix, so combat isn't going to be sufficient to get rid of the Apollosa. They are going to have an IP Masquerena, and we're just going to have to tough it out through 2 hand traps. Nova eats an Ash Blossom. That's disastrous. We'll go Cyber Emergency here in order to grab one of our Drytrons. We'll go Zeta. They'll go Apo. I guess we will go Delta. They'll go Apo. Oh, geez. The Ursatron in our hand isn't looking good either. They're going to Masquerena at point of resolution into SP Little Knight into Flamberge, and oh geez, I don't see a way out for this one. No Gamma either. Yeah, let's just go next. So it's time for game 2, and ho-ho! Who's been caught with their pants down and no non-engine this time? All right, we're going to begin with a copy of Zeta pitching this Ben 10. We will then go Ben 10 effect in order to grab, you guessed it, another Ben 10. That's going to get pitched for an Alpha. We'll activate the effect of the Alpha in order to grab Dad. Then we'll trigger the effect of the Ben 10 to grab a Diviner. We will go Mu Beta Fafnir, send a copy of New 2 to the graveyard, then Medionis Drytron so we get that negation out early. We'll go for New 2. We'll activate the effect of the New 2. We're going to grab ourselves the Ursatron. We'll activate the effect of the Ursatron summoning itself, and we will go ahead and grab a Nova here. We'll go Drytron Medionis targeting the Ursatron, then we'll fire off the Nova for a Gamma. Afterwards, we're going to send 2 of those to the graveyard for Silhouette Rabbit, setting our Silhouette Trick, and then normal summoning a Diviner of the Herald. That's going to send to the graveyard a copy of Herald of the Arclight, and at point of resolution, we can activate Gamma, pitching the Cyber Angel Ben 10, so we have enough for a Dawn Dragster and a Masquerena. We'll set 1 and pass here, feeling pretty good, though that Triple Tactics Thrust would have been big if they had 1 piece of interaction. We're going to go for the Nids here on the Fiendsmith activation. They will go for Baldrake, but guess what? This thing is not once per chain. They will go for Bonfire. We'll negate that with the Dragster, just taking the spell negates where we can, and they'll scoop them up. So it's time for that all-important game 3, and oh man, this is a really rough one. Okay, so you can see that our opponent has 1 defensive card in Crossout Designator, 2 pieces of non-engine in Nibiru and Infinite Impermanence, and then 2 ways to get to their combo, both Diabellstar and Snake Eye Ash. We've opened 2 pieces of non-engine evenly matched, which kind of play really well in multiples. So I guess we'll just see how this one turns out. You're going to see the normal summon Snake Eye Ash version of this combo. We'll go Ash and a Poplar into Divine Temple. It's so hard to determine like when you need to be making the pivot on Diabellstar lines, just because it's so effective as an extender. that you do want to kind of keep it in rotation, but the lines that it enables if you use it as part of your setup combo are so incredible. I think that's kind of where the skill testing is in Fiendsmith. You have to have these soul reads about if your opponent is going to interrupt you or not. Of course, we're not going to. We're just going to let them go all the way in and then evenly match to the end board and hope it's enough. They're going to go for Sequence here. Sequence here is going to shuffle two of these bad boys back. Ooh, no, just kidding. Going for Desiree really early. Let's go Masquerena into a Promethean Princess into a Flamberge activation. Oak and Poplar back. Promethean Princess is going to bring back the Flamberge Dragon and Sequence, target the Desiree, at which point we can Desiree to negate the effect of the Promethean Princess to make an Apo. Apo into Phoenix, into Flamberge, into Masquerena. Horrifying stuff. Let's see what we can accomplish here. Well, first and foremost, we are going to battle phase. We'll activate evenly matched, and this is why they make Desiree, to beat this card specifically, but were you expecting to? Probably not. Everything to the graveyard except for this Apollosa. Now remember, this is still a really problematic card for us. But less so if we have a Forbidden Droplet. Let's go Nova Chain Forbidden Droplet. We will go ahead and negate the effect of the Apollosa to go into New 2. New 2 here in order to grab an Alpha. We'll activate the effect of the Alpha, pitching a Zeta, summoning it, and grabbing a Cyber Angel Ben 10 before activating the Zeta in graveyard, getting this copy of Meteonis and triggering the effect of the Ben 10 in order to grab a Diviner. That's 3, 4, Mubeta Fafnir activation here in order to send Nids, and Meteonis DRYTRON for 5. Let's bring this bad boy out. That's a negation our opponent can't interact with. We should be Gucci from this position. Meteonis DRYTRON targeting the copy of Alpha Thuban. Let's take our opponent's monster, which was still at 800 because of the hilarious way that Forbidden Droplet works with this card. We'll go for the effect of our Diviner, and then we'll make an IP Masquerena into a Gamma, into a Zeta, into a Ben 10. This is just lights out, into a Herald of Mirage Lights. We'll end main phase. They will go Nibiru. That goes to the graveyard. One final card into my 2 pieces of negation. Not going to be sufficient. They'll go OSS. We will negate that with Herald of Mirage Lights. And then, of course, they do have access to Wanted Seeker of Sinful Spoils, which gets them Diabellstar. They can shuffle back to get a target, but that's not sufficient, and they'll concede. So we're back with the deck, and wow, wasn't expecting it to be that successful. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, the new cards, thank God, change the angle of the deck. Now we're focusing on using the extra consistencies and bodies New 2 provides to get out Dad for 2+ negates alongside generic Link monsters and Dawn Dragster, and of course Dad is not a hard once per turn, or even a hard twice per turn. If it's revived with Dynamondo, it can use 2 more, negate, and destroys again. The effect does drain you of a lot of DRYTRON resources in grave, but it's just powerful enough to justify it. You know, it also comes on a 5k body, which helps. 2, there are lines to play around Droll that can end on Dad at a minimum, so you aren't left with just floating bodies. You get interruption and play even if interrupted by a card that used to end your turn. And 3, the deck just has about 11 non-engine slots, if you're counting Prosperity, which gives it some format flexibility. And the cons. 1, Dad doesn't actually have any protection himself. He protects other DRYTRONs, but you're only ever going to have Mubeta Fafnir up, and his float effect is good, and it puts you onto another interruption, but losing him is a pain. 2, it's all monster effects from the hand, so a card like Apollousa just functionally wins the game on its own. Ignore this if the ban list has come out and Apollousa is banned. But if it hasn't, or she isn't, not seeing an answer to her means that 2 to 4 of the DRYTRONs are going to be blanks, and you're going to lose on the spot. And 3, 2 very specific classes of hand traps really screw you up. Firstly, Dimension Shifter is devastating. You can make a generic board through it at the cost of all your resources, but that's weak and you're going to be put in a losing position. They have anything above a brick. And the special mention for the second group, Bystials. With the resurgence of Bystials' popularity, they are just such an efficient way to remove DRYTRONs you have to tribute from hand or Ben 10s. Huge interruptions for the combo. Overall, this version of the deck seems highly consistent and makes great boards, but at the end of the day, it is still DRYTRON. It has a lot of DRYTRON's old weaknesses, and while it shores them up and gives it new strengths, it can't accomplish everything. Expect it to be powerful, depending on how the list shakes out. Still waiting, Konami. So that's that. These 10-minute testings are subsidized by, and occasionally suggested by, my patrons. So I'm going to rattle off the names of some of the higher tier ones right now. Thank you all so much. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. Slifer274, Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Ali, Brett Henry, Canner, Seaweed, Darkmaster Zork, Derpin Dragon, Devin Senpai, DJ Elefante, FBS Lord Derp, Gravity, John Piet, Juan Cruz Avila Zati, Night Mary, Legal Rights, Lockstone, Luis Hernandez, Master of Faster, Matthew M. Derezzo, MBT Play Madolce, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Nebula Yu-Gi-Oh!, Project Mercury, Rose Lapine, Troy Says By Erasure is Gay, Vincent Storm, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, Your Pot of Greed Does What, and Yuki.